So in the last lesson, we saw a review of various shells that have been created throughout the years, and we picked Bash as it is still the default on many Unix and Unix-like systems. So I'm going to open up the terminal application here on my Mac using the Spotlight search. And I'm just going to do Command plus a few times just to make the font bigger so you guys can see. Within Linux operating systems like Ubuntu, you can find the terminal program even in the launch bar. I think nowadays it ships as a default in the launch bar. Other Unix and Unix-like operating systems like Mint OS, Red Hat, and so on, you'll need to find out how to do it. But it shouldn't be too hard to find. And if you're using SSH on a remote server, well, you're already in a terminal, and likely it is Bash or a very similar shell. So for now, we can ignore this warning message. I'll mention that in the next lesson. For now, I just want to go over a very high-level overview of what a terminal typically looks like and how you can interact with it. So the first thing I want to highlight here is this part of the terminal. This is known as the prompt. Typically, for most shells, the default for this prompt is the username, the @sign, and then the machine name. So here on this computer, my username is Chris, and the machine name is Chris's MacBook Pro. This little thing here will show you the current directory you're in, and the squiggle is the root directory in the Bash language. And I know we haven't learned the command yet, but just to show that this is dynamic, at least here in this environment, I'm going to change into the projects directory. And we see that the prompt has changed to show the project's path. So again, that's what this prompt is here, default in Bash. But we'll even see in a later course how we can customize this prompt with various colors, or even make it something like a smiley, or even add emojis. So this part is the prompt. This part here is the only place you can type in this whole window. It's a single line, and it's simply the input. And so you can type characters for as far as you want. They'll carry over into the next page, and you submit commands with the enter key. So I'll do that now. And we see that Bash isn't very dangerous unless you're typing some dangerous commands, but as a beginner you wouldn't know about. There isn't really any risk in just typing nonsense. Bash will just ignore it. It doesn't know what commands you're giving it. And so while writing commands, if there's a long command and you've made an error, you can use the left and right keys to navigate on that command. If you go to the right, you can't go beyond the last character. And if you're too lazy to go back and edit, or you want to cancel the command for any reason, you can just press Control-C. And while it looks like I've pressed enter, that command has actually not been entered. So you can always press Control-C to cancel whatever you're doing at that time. Another important feature of the terminal application is that you can use the up and down arrows to look through your previously entered commands. So even if they're not valid commands, they will show up in this history. And you start by pressing up. So if I press down right now, there's nothing in the history. I haven't entered any new command. I can't go down. So you always go through the history by pressing up. And so we see the command I entered here. And if I press up again, it would be this one. And note that this command does not show up in the history because here I entered Control-C. So that command wasn't actually submitted, and therefore it's not in our history. But anyway, this way of navigating through old commands can sometimes be useful, especially if you're calling the same command very often, or if you've forgotten a command, you can go up a little bit and find it. So that was a brief but high-level overview of what a typical terminal application looks like. We saw that this part here is called the prompt. We can enter commands here on this single line. We can navigate through an existing command that we're writing using the left and right arrows. And we can also look through previous commands with the up arrow. We also saw that if you want to cancel the input of a command or simply just start over to start typing a new command, you can always press Control C at any time, and that will give you a fresh, clean input to start writing in. So with that high level overview done, in the next lesson, we'll start learning our very first real bash commands.